coming up on the Outside of Sunday podcast.
I phoned the GP and I said, I can't. I feel like I'm dying. They did a CT scan, and then so my husband wasn't there. He was driving the kids around for their afternoon activities, and the surgeon came into the room crying. So I knew something must be wrong. And then he said, "You've got stage 4 cancer." And I was like, what? I did not expect that. I expected the cancer part, not the stage 4. How bad? And he's like, really bad. And then he said, with the type of aggressive one that it is, and with all these tests that we've been getting back, there's a 0% chance of cure. So I said, well, great, then we need to pray for a miracle. And he's like, well, you do that.
Hey, you're listening to the Outside of Sunday podcast. Is your faith stuck on Sunday? Christianity was never meant to be constrained to a weekly church service. I'm Krista, and here you'll find discussions on the Bible, mum life, and of course, how to live your faith outside of Sunday. Hey Outsiders, it's Krista here. I just wanted to pop in here before we actually start this week's episode, just to give you a bit of context and background, because you're not actually going to be hearing from me at all in this week's episode. What you're going to hear is a conversation between my friend Liz Goodgame, who's previously featured on this podcast, and her really close, dear friend, Amelia. Amelia, as you would have heard in the preview, is battling stage 4 stomach cancer. And the reason why I'm not in it is because Amelia and Liz, they are so close, and they asked me to record this for them as almost like a little moment in their friendship that they can have forever. But they don't want to just keep this for themselves. They want you to be blessed by what Amelia has to share. So yeah, please enjoy this episode between Liz and Amelia, and I hope you'll be blessed. I know you will. And please keep Amelia in your prayers. She is still battling stage 4 stomach cancer, so if we could get behind her in prayer, that would be awesome. Keep the tissues nearby, but I really hope you will enjoy and be blessed by this episode.
We are really excited that you're here. You're a really bright light in my life and in our community, and you have a lot of wisdom, and I'm really excited that you're here talking with us. So tell us a little bit about you. Who is Amelia?
Who is Amelia? I'm a mom,
Yeah.
a wife,
Uh-huh.
I'm a kingdom warrior,
Yeah.
and a pediatrician.
Yeah.
I know, like, people say, like, oh, when someone asks you who you are, you shouldn't put your occupation there. But I think my occupation is also a big part of who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you decide that you wanted to be a doctor?
Oh, I don't know. I've just always wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And my dad was a doctor, so yeah, I always wanted to work with people and help people.
Yeah. And you, like me, are an immigrant here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Tell me about where you're from and what brought you here to New Zealand.
Okay, so I'm from South Africa. We, in September 2021, my husband said, "What do you think about moving to New Zealand?" And I said, "I don't." We looked at immigrating to Australia 7 years ago and prayed a lot about it, and had some doors opening, quite a lot shutting, and things didn't quite work out, and never got peace about it. So we decided, no, we're not going to immigrate. We're going to stay in South Africa, and there's loads to do there. And we had, a lot of little projects and outreach things going. So when he just mentioned that was sort of out of the blue. So I said, okay, well, let's pray about it. And we fasted from coffee for 5 weeks and prayed about it. And the Lord very clearly showed us that this is what he wants us to do. I was not happy with that, and fought a lot with the Lord about it, and said, no, thank you. I love South Africa, and I like what we do, and we do a lot of stuff, and like, who's going to look after all the families we're looking after, and who's going to do this and that. And it goes, the Lord told me, well, if you don't obey me, you'll still be in heaven with me one day, but you won't be sitting at the bridal table. So lo and behold, that was like, so, and then, within 3 months we were here.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were on the news in South Africa during COVID
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
What was that about?
So my husband Gareth is an anaesthetist, and he was working in an ICU during COVID time, and we were going through our second wave, and the hospital we worked at was the worst hit in South Africa at that time. And they had converted the whole ICU to a COVID ICU. The theatre was converted, the recovery room, into a second COVID ICU, and they'd be losing like 6 patients a day, and the turnover was just like, it was incredible. And it was in December, end of December, and I had worked a shift, and the nursing staff were all telling me in the pediatric ward, because we were quiet because the kids weren't getting hit as badly, how the ICU staff would just walk out of the hospital and collapse in the parking lots because they just can't anymore, and they would just be crying constantly, and they were physically and mentally and emotionally completely just exhausted. The medical manager of the hospital at that stage was a really close friend as well, spoke to her, and she was just saying, there's, everyone is also sick, so it puts more pressure on the system, and there's no porters, and there's not enough of this, and the nursing staff just need to do the work of everyone. And I sort of said, well, what would you think if I just reach out to the community and the church and ask them to maybe help with some stuff? And she said they would be awesome. So I went into my practice rooms, and I prayed, and I typed up a WhatsApp, and I made the mistake of putting my cell phone number on there. And I sent it to like a few people that I knew in different churches, and I said, please, can you just reach out to your churches? And the WhatsApp went viral, and my number went viral. And the community just absolutely reached out. And what we asked for, we called it adopt a nurse, is basically that the community adopts and gets into groups of 5, adopts a nurse, just pray for her, give her meals for her family, meals for her when she's on shift, know when she's on shift so that they can, pray with her and pray for her during the shift. Community members coming and working as porters, because a lot of people lost their jobs. They were sitting at home themselves in a mental state, and they all wanted to help. So they came, and they were trained to just run around and fill up the pharmacy, stocking up the pharmacy. It was just, it was incredible. So that completely, the Lord just took that and ran with it.
So cool. Yeah, such a good story.
Was good. And it had a lot of impact on people and their relationship with the Lord, because because that was what the whole idea was about, putting that community around every single healthcare worker. Yeah.
I love that. I want to talk about New Zealand and kind of what you loved about New Zealand, but first I want to sort of segue into your faith, because I think that story is like such a good picture of why I think you really are such a just noteworthy person.
Thanks.
But what is that? How's that tied to your faith? Like, when did you become a believer, and how did you become a believer that kind of like moves in that way and kind of responding to need, like you did in that moment? Like, what was it about? Yeah. Did you have mentors or people that kind of inspired you in that way?
I've always been a believer. I grew up in a Christian household where God was just the middle point of everything. And I grew up, I remember my mom's a really strong Christian with a really brilliant relationship with the Lord. And she used to always say, like, you're not just a Christian, you're a newborn Christian. And because she said a lot of people call themselves Christians, but they don't change the way they live, and they don't have a relationship with the Lord. So she always put that in our mind. So we're not just Christian, we're a newborn Christian. And I grew up, we did Bible study every day together as a family, and she ran a praise, and she's a ballet dancer. So she ran a praise and worship dancing group. So from primary school, I was part of that group as well. And I think that really takes you into God's throne room and just helps you not just praise and worship in the normal way. And I just grew up knowing the Lord, and was surrounded, my whole family was like that. And I don't know, the Lord put that. He says He will give you the desires of what he will end up leading you to do. So I'm sure that desire for like wanting to help people is from him. He put it in me. I've just always had it. I would always spot the one person who had an off day or needed a little extra hand, or that's just the Lord showing it to me.
So good. I love that. You are someone that really teaches me. You're a good teacher, and you are a voracious learner, it seems to me. And so tell me some of your practices or habits around your own relationship with God. What is it that is kind of been formative in your sort of spiritual formation?
I think it changes all the time. It depends on the stage of our life where we are at. I think if you asked me this when my kids were toddlers, it would look different from what it's looking like now. But I like going through the Word and not just using devotionals. I feel the Lord talks to us personally, and we don't need other people to teach us when the Lord teaches all of us. So I would maybe have a devotional that I'll be doing, but I will be working through the Word on my own with the Lord. And I think that is my daily, if I would say my daily Bible study would be just working through whatever book in the Bible by myself, with the Holy Spirit leading me, and having a spiritual journal and writing all those thoughts down that the Holy Spirit put in your heart. The Word really is a living Word, and I find it incredible how I can read one passage and 3 weeks later you read the same passage and it has a completely different meaning, and the Lord shows you something completely different. And then I would have a book that someone else wrote about whatever topic that I would also be working through, and then normally I would lead a Bible study group as well, and then I would have something I would be working through with them, and then I would have something I'd be working through with my kids as well. So I'll have many different things, right. But I find it amazing because that's how the Lord, I always know I've got confirmation about something, because lo and behold, one day you'll read three different things and they actually all say exactly the same or point to the same thing, and then well, that was the Lord's timing. And then I think the most important thing is, before starting any of that, is just praying and asking the Holy Spirit to open your eyes to what He wants to show you in the Word, and being sensitive to it, and then choosing a time of day when there's really no distractions around you. So for me, practically, that would be standing up a little bit earlier than the kids now and getting some time in the Word. Doesn't give me much time for journaling, but then the days that I wasn't working or I'm alone at home, I would take a bit more time and have some praise and worship time with my Bible study, and then listen to what the Lord tells you and writing it down as well.
That's good. We are going to take a bit of a turn with this interview and get to the meat of what we're talking about a little bit more. You have stage 4 stomach cancer.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about it?
Tell me about that, and when you got diagnosed, and kind of how that happened, and
I will start by saying, before we moved here, the Lord actually also gave me a vision of Him standing in front of me and putting His hands around my eyes and telling me, keep your eyes on me. It's going to get more difficult and you can't look around. You need to keep your eyes on me. And I thought He was talking about the move, because that was pretty hard, which I'm sure you know. And every time it got tough, being this side and missing the family, I thought, keep your eyes on me, keep your eyes on me. The Lord said it was going to get tough. And then we had this bang in February, and I was like, shoo, okay, that was not what you were talking about. So I started having symptoms August, September last year. And they gradually just got worse, and I started seeing the doctor from October last year. And yeah, I think it was I just had symptoms that couldn't really be put into any diagnostic little box, which made it all very confusing and didn't know what was going on. And eventually I think by January I was in such severe pain and I couldn't anymore that the GP referred me to the hospital, but they couldn't see me before March. And it just got to the point that I could barely function anymore. On the Thursday I was at work and my head of department asked me, so how's it going? And I just burst into tears and I said, I cannot function anymore. I just seen all my patients and gritted through the pain, but I can't go on and no one's listening to me and I'm scared that this might be cancer the way this is now going. And she said she'll see what she can do, and then she phoned me back later. So she said, go home and go and rest. And then she phoned and said, no, she's not getting anywhere. And I think that's just, unfortunately, it's part of my personality was the problem, because I just keep on going and I just kept on going. I think maybe if I started calling in sick every time I was in that severe pain, like it would have flagged people. She's not been at work for 2 months or like whatever. And yeah, and I phoned the GP and I said, I can't. I feel like I'm dying. So she organised that the hospital would see me in ED, were the surgeons, and also still told me, like, but you look so good, when she gave me my referral letter to the hospital. And I went there and I saw the surgeon and described my symptoms and said I even look pregnant and people don't believe me because I'm skinny already. And then they did a CT scan, and then so my husband wasn't there. He was driving the kids around for their afternoon activities, and the surgeon came into the room crying. So I knew something must be wrong. And then he said, you've got stage 4 cancer. And I was like, what? I did not expect that. I expected the cancer part, not the stage 4. And I was like, but how bad? And he's like, really bad. And you were right all the time. And your abdomen was distended and there's fluid in your abdomen. And anyway, so yeah, that was end of February, and yeah, it was a shock to say the least. And it just felt from there as though the news just got worse and worse. You would think that stage 4 cancer is already a bad diagnosis, but then the tests that they did came back showing that it's a highly, highly aggressive form of stomach cancer. So not just the normal one. And then they said, but there might be some options of immunotherapy, not just chemotherapy. And so testing was sent off for that. And then the next thing came back and it just said, no, sorry, it's also not even amenable to any of the immunotherapies. It's... yeah, and so when I saw the oncologist, because I mean, being a medical professional, I know stage 4 cancer, there's like a 2 to 3% chance of survival still. Asked him, what are the chances of me being that 2 to 3%? And I told him he needs to be honest with me, because my husband and I are both doctors and we know, and we want to know exactly where we stand and what's going on. And then he said, with the type of aggressive one that it is, and with all these tests that we've been getting back, there's a 0% chance of cure. So I said, well, great, then we need to pray for a miracle. And he's like, well, you do that. So yeah, so that's what we've been at. We've been praying for our miracle, and we've had quite a few already. And it was as though the Lord was just making sure all the boxes are ticked, that no medical professional or medical drug or anything can be, what's the word, that there can be no claim to that having any effect on the cancer, but him. So yeah, it felt like in that beginning it was just blow after blow after blow. Yeah.
And tell me a few of the miracles you've experienced.
Yeah, so we did have some scripture, and I can't remember all of them offhand because there were many, that the Lord told us that this will not end in death, which I think is a big thing to say and a big thing to proclaim and to declare. But that is what we have been getting, and we've been getting confirmation like about that. And then when I saw the oncologist, he also said we need to, because it's so far advanced in stage 4 already, we need to start treatment immediately. So we started the chemotherapy tablets, and then 4 or 5 days after that, the IV intravenous chemotherapy, and 2 days after that, I ended up in hospital dying. So this was the first week of March, and I was in tremendous amount of pain. Since the IV chemotherapy, I hadn't eaten anything. You were still there. You remember all the food next to my bed and all the pain I was in. And I couldn't sleep because of all the pain. And I was on a lot of painkillers. So it wasn't because I wasn't getting the right treatment or anything. The cancer was just that advanced. And for 2 days, I told my husband, I need to go to the hospital. And he knew what was coming, being a doctor himself. And he just kept on saying, no, you're okay. You don't need to go to the hospital. And eventually he phoned his one colleague and said, she's in so much pain and I don't want to be involved with her treatment. Can you please come and help sort out some of the treatment and come and have a look at her? And she arrived and burst into tears and told him, Gareth, she needs to be in a hospital. And that's how at last I ended up being admitted to hospital. And everyone was great at the hospital, but nothing helped that they did. Nothing could make me eat. I was just trapped in this severe nausea and pain. And I felt as though I was in a literal pit, like that was dug into the ground, and it was a small little hole in the ground, and it was dark, and I was in the bottom of that, and I was aware of all of you and everything that was going on around me. But I was lying in the bottom of that pit, and I was crying out for the Lord. This is now where I'm going to get emotional. And I was crying, and I was like, Lord, where are you? And why are you not helping me? And like, I'm stuck in this pit, and I cannot get out. Like, I can see the light at the top, but I can't get there. I've got no power. And even if I stand up, I can't reach the top. And I'm like, where are you? And then at one stage I was praying like, oh, Jesus, I know why you said, my Lord, why have you forsaken me? Because that is exactly how I feel, like, because I just didn't. And then I sang these Afrikaans praise and worship songs from when I was a kid. That came up in my mind, and I was singing that continuously obviously this was all in my thoughts, going on. And then at one stage I was saying, Lord, why am I not just dying, or why am I not actually having a heavenly experience? I don't understand this pit that I'm in. What is this, and where is this, and why are you not there? And at one stage there was even a ladder in the pit, and I remember praying to the Lord, I'm too weak, I can't even climb out in this ladder. Like, help me get out of this pit. And then the ladder disappeared after a while, and it felt like forever. It was basically those 2 days at home that I was in that pit, and then the day in the hospital, 2 days in the hospital. And then on that Friday evening, so the second day in the hospital, the church organized that prayer meeting for me, and I had the hospital in South Africa that I had worked at, Amelia and my husband, they and this is just the Lord absolutely putting on people's hearts, they organized a prayer meeting for me for their morning before work started, which time-wise worked out to exactly the same time as our church had their prayer meeting. And my dad went to that prayer meeting, and he said there were so many nursing staff, and then like some of the doctors that we know that all came there, and they all prayed for me. And then Gareth was sitting with me in the hospital room, and at this stage Gareth had told me, it's okay, you can go, I'll be okay, just go with the kids and I'll be fine. And sorry, that always gets me. And then someone had sent this message. There was actually 2 or 3 people who had sent it over the course of the week, and at some stage I had forwarded to him, and he then started reading that to me, and it was the Lord speaking. And the gist of it was that Lord was saying, like, it is not your time. So Gareth was reading this over me. He said, God is saying, it is not your time. Satan is deceiving you. You are not going to die now. You need to take a step of faith. I'm going to save you, and the glory will be mine, and mine being the Lord's. And it was a few words like that. And I remember at this stage I wasn't talking anymore, and I was obviously not walking anymore either. And I just felt the Lord telling me in my heart, like, that step of faith is a literal step. I need to get up and I need to take a step. So Gareth was there and one of our other friends, and I asked Gareth to come closer, and I asked him to help me up. And so the 2 of them helped me up, and I was so weak I could barely walk, but they propped me up on each side, and I told them, I need to walk, the Lord is telling me to walk. And they helped me, and we just basically walked out of the door a few steps outside of the room and then back in, and declared Psalm 118 verse 17, which says, I will not die, but I will live and proclaim what the Lord has done for me. And said that over and over a few times. And they helped me back into bed, and I looked at Gareth and I said, you need to help me eat. And then he helped me eat, and he just started crying when he said, like, really? Are you able to eat? Like, you haven't ate like so many days, like. And I was like, yeah, I need to eat. And he gave me a chicken breast. And from there I just got stronger and stronger. And this was after the oncologist had actually seen me in the hospital and told one of my friends to call the family, and they all need to come and say their goodbyes. And so my family were all on the planes, because it takes you 2 days to get from South Africa to New Zealand, on their way to come to me. And their faith never wavered, though. So my mom they just didn't book the plane tickets to come, because she was like, you're not going to die. But if I was going to die, then they would have missed it. So they all arrived during the following week. And I just got stronger. And then by the Monday I was discharged. And then I think the second month after this, when I saw the oncologist for an appointment, like the day I walked into his office, he looked at me and he's like, you know, you're supposed to be dead right now, right? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you weren't supposed to. And I said, like, but you never told me that. He's like, yes, I did. When I saw you the first time, I told you to get your affairs in order. I said, I didn't think you meant I'm going to die in 2 weeks. It's like, well, I did.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, so that was the first big miracle that we had. And since then, I've been getting stronger. I have my moments of real weakness and things, but yeah, so far, so good.
Yeah. I love that you were thinking about children's songs. And you've told me that a few times. Like, there's so many ways that you connect with God, and you know, you were talking about different seasons, and that one really just it's so sweet. I love it. Yeah. Like, what were some of those songs that you that you remember?
Oh no, it's some Afrikaans songs, and it's like I can't even remember all the details of it, but I just remember there were two of them, and they just kept on going around and around in my mind. And what was really like interesting for me after that, like reading scriptures and especially all the Psalms, is that how often the Psalms and the Bible talk about the pit. And never in my life had that stood out to me before. And my Bible specifically, in the one, I think it's in Psalm 18, it talks about I'm in the pit and Lord, you need to come and save me from the pit. And it talks about the pit being Sheol, which is the place that people go when they die before they go to heaven or hell. And I was like, wow, that is so a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And I was there, I know, because I was literally stuck in it for a few days. And then that was just amazing also, that like how even though I could not feel the Lord in those days, like he was there. And I mean, he's the one that put the ladder there and wanted me to get out. And how that piece that Gareth read to me said, like, I am with you, and it's Satan deceiving you, and how Satan was making it feel as though I was all alone. Like, but meanwhile, God was there all the time.
Practically speaking, you are a person that likes to go a lot.
Yeah.
Has it been hard for you to have cancer?
It has been hard for me.
Yeah.
But I've had a season before in my life that I was bedridden for 12 weeks with my first pregnancy with my son. I went into really premature labor at 24 weeks with him, and nearly lost him a few times actually. Satan was out a few times as well. There were weird things that happened to me during that pregnancy. And for 12 weeks, I was bedridden because every time I stood up and did anything more than just go to the bathroom, I would start getting labor pains. So, and then I was forced to as well to slow down. And the Lord said, you need to slow down and you need to learn to let other people do things for you. And it's the same now. And it's hard to let go, and I like it's a fault of mine, because you would think it's a good thing, but also I think a lot of it also comes from because you think you can do things better than other people. And it frustrates you looking at other people doing stuff that you sort of think like, oh, I think I can do that quicker. Or so yeah, no, it's not difficult asking for help, but it's difficult watching other people do things for you when you want to do it yourself, and when you feel like you want to get going but your body just can't anymore. So that is really difficult, and it's a daily struggle. And I, like, every day for 3 hours I need to lie down. I don't need to sleep, but I need to lie down, and also not be active with a lot of stuff or do things. I need to lie down, close my eyes for at least an hour of that, whether I sleep or not, and just to get my body to have enough energy to get through the rest of the day. So that is really hard, but it's part of the journey.
You talked a little bit about your family in the beginning, but it sounds like you have pretty great parents.
Yes, I do.
Tell me about that. I mean, I know that your mom has been, both of your parents were here for a long time. Your mom was here for longer. On like a real practical level, like what has been helpful for you about your amazing parents?
Yeah, so just the spiritual support and the emotional and mental support. It's a difficult journey, and I think a lot of the journey, it's a physical fight, but a lot of it is mental as well, because watching and feeling your body going the way you don't want it to go really messes with your mind. And it's just, my mom has just got an unwavering faith, and my dad as well. This has brought my dad to a much, I think, stronger place in his relationship with the Lord as well. Than They just fully rely on the promises that we've been given. And the days when I just can't anymore or feel like this is too difficult, especially when I've had the chemotherapy, because the chemotherapy, I'm bedridden for 7 days, and my husband has to dress me, undress me, and it's really difficult. They are just like, you can do this, and you've had these promises, and you cannot proclaim the negative stuff, like, and just, keep on with that. And my mom would pray, like I would call them every day during that week, and my mom would pray over me. And my dad, I remember when they were here, the one night we were all praying together, and he was praying, and he was just saying, like, God, you are the primary doctor. Like, and I was like, wow, that is actually so true. Like, he's a doctor. Like, I mean, he heals and he does, and we always say it, but just hearing it, that word, he used the Afrikaans word for it, and it was just like, that for me was, I was quite, actually, yes, that is an awesome way of seeing it. Like, God's got all the medicines and all the stuff. So they've been a real emotional and spiritual support, and helping me through it, and making me not give up, and being positive about everything. Whereas I'm sure it must be incredibly difficult seeing your daughter and hearing your daughter like this, and then being so far away and knowing, but the Lord knew what lay ahead, and still this is where He called us to, and there is a reason for that, as difficult as it is for us to understand.
What is the Afrikaans word for doctor?
Geneesheer.
Say it again.
Geneesheer.
Okay. And then, did you ever have a question about whether or not you should go back when you got sick? Like, did you think about that?
For, I think, an hour.
Yeah.
My husband and I were like, should we go back? There two things. And one is extremely practical. We don't have a medical insurance in South Africa anymore, and you definitely cannot go back to the public system because that's a death sentence in itself. So it's not actually really an option. But even if it was, and we've got enough savings and things like that to get us through for a while. But you also don't want to end up bankrupt after the whole journey either. But then also we realized that that's not the Lord's plan for us to run away when it gets tough. And I think that's part of, when we initially came here, we thought it was going to be for 3 or 4 years only. And then towards the middle of last year, we were like, wow, we're halfway through the journey already. Like, are we going to look at going back, like, at the end of this year? And the very next day at my Bible study, it said, like, oh, God gives people an assignment to do, and a lot of time they're like, yes, God, and they go for it, and then halfway through the assignment it gets too hard and they get up and they stop. And then it says, and then God takes the anointing that He put on you to complete the assignment and gives it to someone else. And I was like, Gareth, you think the Lord is trying to tell us something? So at that stage already we knew this, like, if we do it, it's giving up on the assignment God gave us here. And I think it's the same. It's part of the reason. Well, I don't think He caused this, but He knew it was coming, and He can use it in His way. And I think to go back to South Africa now is not what He would want us to do. Yeah.
So some practical questions. How has it been with your kids? How have you talked to your kids, and how's this changed your marriage and your relationship dynamics and your family life? Like, what does it look like?
So we've been honest with the kids about it from the start. So as soon as we got the biopsy results back, we took the eldest, Matthew, and told him separately from the younger ones, just because he's got a little bit more understanding than they have, especially of the word cancer, because he's old enough now to have known people like, well, my uncle and other people that we know that have died from cancer. So he had already started calling cancer the dying disease, even before I was diagnosed. So we knew if we're going to use that word, he's going to know what it's all about. So we told him Mama's been diagnosed with cancer, and all three of them, even separately, first question they asked us, are you going to die? And then we were honest with them and we said, according to the doctors, yes, there is no treatment for the type of cancer that I have. They are going to try some treatment on me, but they have already said that this type of cancer, you've only got a few months left, and that's it. There's nothing that's going to take the cancer away. So, but then we said we also, that is all in the natural, and we serve a God who's above the natural, and he's given us promises about healing, and that Mama will not die. So that is what we believe for, and that is what we are praying for. And they took it okay. Matthew, well, they all cried, and they were all understandably upset about it. And Matthew had to take a day off school and spend some time with me. He knew before the others, a full day before the others, so had that time with me. And they've been incredible. The children, when I am in the state that I'm in after my chemotherapy, I can barely talk. I'm just grunt at them, and so I can't even read Bible, and I struggle to even pray. And they just bring their Bibles and start reading scripture over me, and they pray for me, and they've just been incredible, and they've all stepped up, and I think they're all at an age that they can step up now and be aware of some of the implications, and be aware that they each have a responsibility now in the house, and they need to help my husband out, and because he can't do everything by himself, and especially now that we don't have the family that's around anymore, and and so, but we've tried to do some little practical things just to also not make it all doom and gloom every time I have the chemotherapy. And we the week before we'll talk about, because we had this incredible community around us helping and bringing meals every time I have chemotherapy, but with kids, and they like their routine, they like their certain meals, and sometimes it goes on well and sometimes it doesn't go down that well, and I didn't want them to start associating it with another thing that's not nice when the chemotherapy comes along. So we start planning the meal the week before, and then they get to decide most of the meals that they want, but the rule is it needs to be healthy. And so then we plan it ahead of time, and ahead of time I'll go and buy the stuff, and it's easy things, and they'll help Gareth to make those meals, and they excited because it's all the nice stuff, and so there's some positive things, but it's still hard on them. And the morning that they know I go in for my chemotherapy, there'll be tears, and there'll be extra hugs and extra clinginess, but overall I think they are coping quite well, better than I would have coped at that age, I think.
And you and Gareth are both doctors, so and people of faith. So is there a tension that you're carrying that is probably additional than, somebody that knows so much? Has it been hard for you knowing more than you maybe should?
I don't think so, no. I think it gives me more clarity, and I know more the reality of things. But I also, being in the medical field, I've also seen miracles after I prayed for patients. I've had 2 absolute miracles that can't be explained any other way. Clear-cut miracles into patients. So I've seen that, and that faithfulness of God. So I absolutely know it can be done. And like I said, I just think he's just made sure that there's no ways it can be claimed otherwise.
I love that. Yeah, so you obviously know the prognosis and you've thought about that.
Yeah.
And if you were to, I can't ask this question, Amelia.
You can ask any question, that's fine.
No, I need to stop and pause and start again because I think it's really an important question to ask so that people that are in the place that you are, that are feeling hopeless and alone and maybe even questioning whether or not God cares about them and, maybe have a similar prognosis. How do you process that in your heart? How do you process the reality that you may die? And that would be just a really terrible thing. And how do you process that in the context of this loving God that we know and trust and believe in?
Well, first of all, I think it's a more terrible thing for the people left behind than for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not scared of dying at all. I've gone through the process of nearly dying once, and yes, it was extremely painful, but I mean, that's a bias. It's going to be painful for a little bit, and then it's going to be past, and then I'm going to heaven. And it's going to be so much better than anything else. So like, if I look at it like that, I'm like, I'm not scared of that process at all. Like, there's not even a small part of me that is like, has got any fear. The thing that hurts me is leaving my kids. And that is what I struggle with. And then I'm like, God, there's not anyone else that knows my kids as good as I do. There's not going to be like anyone that's going to advocate for them like I do, or put in the spiritual work that I put into them to try and make them kingdom warriors than anybody else is going to do. Like, it's just, there's just not. And then I would pray that I've prayed that there would be someone else that steps up to the plate to be a mom for them. That would be my wish. Like, as hard as it is. And I think that's the thing that for me is the worst of everything. But then, like, also, like, you can't think like that all the time because God knows best. And he knows what's best for everyone. And if this is to be, then it is. And but you can't focus on that you might die the whole time, because then you miss the time that you've got left. And I think that's what I sat with my husband, because he really struggled. And I said, like, what's ending up happening if he's stuck in that place is that we are losing time, great time that we might still have, because we've been given these promises and we're clinging to the promises. But we also, it's like, we know we're living in the end times, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop investing our money and stop saving for our kids' futures and stop tell our kids, oh, it's okay not to study because by the time you get to university, I mean, they might not be like, you don't stop doing anything. So the reality is like, okay, I still need to plan for the eventuality that I might die. We're all going to die 100% in any case. So, and we don't all know. I've just been given a few months timeline, like, which maybe is a bit better, because then you can actually enjoy every single last minute that you have and have your mind set like that and see it like that. And my husband's work has been incredible and giving him a lot of time off and so supporting him practically and make the best use of that time that you've got, which other people might not do. And then the next day they die in a car crash in any case. Like, that's our reality. And then I got given this beautiful little devotional about women who have journeyed through cancer. And the one woman said she was really stuck on that she might die. And she wasn't even given a stage 4, but she said, and then one day a pastor looked at her and said, like, did God tell you were going to die? And she was like, no, actually. So he said, like, so who said you're going to die? Like, why? And it's also for us, it's not for, as a doctor, I know that is what we deal with, the facts and the things, but it's also not for us to say and to give it like a precise timeline. And so it's, and God didn't say I was going to die either.
Well, you made that super hard question seem easy, Amelia. Which is what I love about you. There's so many things I love about you. In this season, when you are like highly sensitive to moments that are meaningful, like what is giving you life and making you feel thankful, and little things that, what is good for you in this season?
Because I'm not working, I get to spend a lot of time with the Lord when the kids are at school, and the Lord is really talking to me a lot about the supernatural, like we call it, and basically just that our reality is not his reality, and actually, like, we're living in this world, but we aren't of this world either. So we should stop looking at it like we are part of this world, because we're not. And I love that. It excites me incredibly. I'm like, and part of it is this healing process, because I mean, this second miracle we just touch on it is that half of the cancer is gone already, which no one expected the chemotherapy to have an effect like that. So already the prognosis has gone from weeks to months now, and I've already outlived those months now. So even though I should have died in the first few weeks and I didn't, I've now outlived those months as well, and given a few more months now, but in the natural, and God has already supernaturally taken away half of the cancer, which is incredible. And he can do so much more, and he's teaching me that should be our normal as well.
Is there anything else that you kind of feel like would be helpful advice, or anything that you'd like to share to wrap things up?
I just think that image that the Lord gave me when we moved here is just to keep your eyes on him, because if I do start looking to my left or my right, and I start looking at what the doctors are saying, or what the results of the actual cancer showed, then it tends to get too much. But if I keep my eyes on him, then that disappears, and that's what I need to focus on. And that's like Peter walking on the water. Like when he kept his eyes on Jesus, he could do it, and he could do the supernatural, walking on water. But as soon as he started seeing the storms and the waves and looking at the natural and what was going on around him, he started sinking. And I think that's what we tend to do, not just with cancer, with whatever you're going through. You're looking at the circumstances through a human perspective instead of a God perspective.
So good. Thank you so much for being here. I think you're amazing, and I'm really thankful that you decided to do this interview.
Awesome. Thanks.
Congrats! You made it to the end of this episode of the Outside of Sunday podcast. Thanks for the support. Become an official outsider by liking and subscribing and leaving a 5-star review. If you'd like to connect with the podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Outside of Sunday podcast. And don't forget to let someone you know about this podcast.